Alrighty guys, so look who's back. We're going to start a new weekly segment with Gary's coaching tips and a little technical tip every now and again. We'll try and get at least once a week for you, getting a few tips. So today we've had a problem with Greg's getting a few arrows just out of sync. You'll get a group and a couple of arrows just willy-nilly go everywhere. So I'll let Gary take over. We found that he had a problem with his, what was it, the serving of a nock.
I'll just put the groundwork into this.
You can do that, Greg.
Are you there? All right, so what I've got, oh, hello. So what I have here are the platinum pierce. They're 300 with 140 in the front. Now, these ones shoot in the center all the time. These ones don't. So, well, I had different nocks on, so I'm going to make sure I've got the same nocks on, putting different colours on. Now I went back and I've see, that's a brand new pin, yep?
Brand new.
And I've spun these arrows, they spin perfectly. I don't know why they're going off. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to shoot with these ones and have a look and see. I'm going to record where they go, because like I've got A, B, C, D, E on them, and C and E will always go down here, D is always up there, B's always over to the side. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. So I just can't see. I mean, they look straight. I've spun them there straight. There couldn't be anything in the point doing it. I've checked the pins are okay. They haven't been hit. The fletching seems okay to me. It's just a mystery. Half of them don't work. So let us know what arrows you use. Now I'm talking about 3D or blah blah. I'm target arrows that don't miss. That's what we need, isn't that right?
That's
we need target arrows that only hit X's. What do you use? Right. So these are the good ones, and these are the failing ones. So I'm going to shoot with these first round and shoot with these the second round, and you'll see the difference. But Gary's going to take over now and give us some ideas on what could be wrong. And it's not me.
Not you. Rightio, it's good to be back. My head is spinning with ideas. I sat at work the other night typing. Sort of had a bit of a plan in place to throw some coaching tips, set up ideas, and I've got a few hypotheticals that I just want to put out there and get you thinking and get your ideas on it. With archery, and you guys have realised that already, there is a multitude of opinions and ideas on things, and I think a lot of the time what it really comes down to is what works for you and what you're happy with in your head. When I'm coaching or doing courses or whatever, people ask me for advice, I usually say that there's probably three things involved in that perfect shot. Your first thing's your bow setup, obviously has got to be right, your technique and what's going on in your head. Now, your bow setup's probably the only thing of those three things that you can control 100%. So you have to have your bow exactly the way you want it, the way you like it, even down to the colour of your fletchers and the colour of the bow. I know that sounds a bit crazy, but the last bow I bought purely because I like the colour of the blue. It was a Fanatic, and it gets to that point because we have a situation now where all our top compounders are shooting incredible scores, but if you line 5 of them up, they've got 5 different bows, 5 different sets of arrows and 5 different release aids. So that just tells me that you've really got to satisfy yourself in your brain that your equipment is what you like and how you like it. Now, I had all this, I had ideas to throw at you to get a bit of feedback and a bit of talk happening, but then I got a phone call from Greg yesterday. Now, Greg has an overdraw with a beiter rest on his bow. I had concerns, or I expressed my opinion on overdraws originally with Greg. So the phone call I got from him yesterday was of a nature of, I think you're right. So he wanted to put a spot hog's rest back on, which was fine. I said, yeah, come up. So when we pulled the rest off, but then of course he's cut his arrows to suit the overdraw and they were too short for the spot hog. So we went back to the beiter. But in the process of discussing the problem with Greg, with a couple of his arrows that are inconsistent, as much as I tried to explain to Greg that it's probably he's human, but he won't accept that. There's got to be another reason. I started looking at the fact that the arrows, unbeknownst to me, Greg has had different nocks on them. Now, different nocks.
What do you mean unbeknownst to you? Was one
Well,
one blue and the others are yellow?
Well, I was so busy looking and working with other aspects, I must have missed that. But this can be a factor in inconsistencies with arrows. Your nock pressures are different, your nock thicknesses are different, the way they sit between your D-loop. And then further investigation, I found that Greg's serving between the D-loop was basically fluffy and furry, and this arrow, the nocks weren't clipping on correctly. So I'm thinking, well, that might be an issue. So before we go any further today, as you can see from the serving between where the D-loop was, it's a mess. So the first thing,
I'm a bit worried about that too.
That's not such a good thing either. But that's
not
as
easy though.
We need to fix that as well. But
these are your Hyot. These are your Hyot strings, by the way.
Oh, the Hyot factory strings.
Yeah.
It's wear and tear. Let's face it. It's wear and tear. You need to keep an eye on these sort of things.
Hyot then, is it?
So as usual, this is my fault. So I've got to fix it for him. So what we're going to do, we're going to cut now, and I'll put a new serving on just to save a bit of time.
Thank goodness you brought all your gear.
And there's a couple of little things I do in regards to locating the nock and the way I put a D-loop on that is maybe a bit OCD, but it's one of those factors that I do purely because it eliminates any concerns or issues that you may have something wrong with your bow. It's no point drawing your bow back and thinking, oh man, is this right, is that right? You've got to eliminate all that out of your head so you can concentrate on exactly what you're doing. All right, so I'll get that done and we'll come back and I'll show you what I'm talking about in regards to that. Rightio, what we're doing here, I've got Greg's bow set up ready to reserve the main string. We found out that the string is actually in good nick underneath, there's no issues, it's only the serving had disappeared from it. I've got this little U-serve jig, which is pretty handy. You can actually separate the string and pull it away for when you're doing the serving, so you don't have to actually remove the string from your bow. The only issue is I may have problem with the cable guard in the way, so I'll see if I can get that out. It just saves a bit of time when you don't have it pressed to take your string off, and then you need, obviously once you get the string off, you still need your string maker to press it. This actually keeps good tension on the string so that when you serve it, you get it nice and tight and clean. I've got to get my serving jig, Jimmy, out of the... So when you're serving your string, you've got to make sure that you get the thickness correct, obviously, for the tension on your nock. You've got to have just the right amount of tension so that the nock clicks on, but you don't want it too tight and definitely not too loose. So I've got a variation. I like to use the braided serving myself. I've got a variation of thicknesses of the braided serving. So it's basically at the start, you've got to work out, you start serving obviously and test it as you go before you to get to the important part in the middle where the arrow actually knocks. I'm just going to be fiddling a bit here for a minute just to get it set up. Greg, can I have one of your nocks, please? Just to get the, we've got to get the groove thickness. I'm guessing he uses the large groove on his G nocks. His G pin nock, sorry. We'll start with the thicker serving. So as you can see, if you clip that onto that, obviously there's a lot of room there because we need to run the serving to take that up and to protect the string, that goes without saying. This might, sometimes if you don't have the serving that'll do the job correctly, you can run a couple of strands underneath to thicken it. Obviously if it's too thick, well then you've got problems, you've got to go to a thinner one, but if your serving's not quite thick enough, you just run a couple more strands of string material which thickens it up at the point where you're doing the serving for your nock. Rightio, we're back after a battery change. I'm just setting up a bit of a test serving here just to see whether the thickness of this braided serving is going to be right or not, or whether I've got to go to a thinner one. You just have to bear with me until I get it to stop twisting. Rightio, we've got the serving started. We'll just nip off the excess underneath so that we can get the serving clean and actually get an indication of whether the thickness is going to be correct or not for the nock size, for the groove size in the nock. Rightio, now here's the test for this thickness. That's pretty good, I'm happy with that. It clips on with a bit of pressure, firm enough, so we'll just keep going with that size braiding and we'll just finish the serving up.
I said that to David Robertson, you know, he's in trouble. Oh, the biggest party, the living party. That's not very unusual.
I think I'm going to have an issue when I get to the cable guide here. I'm probably going to have to take that off. Or maybe not, we'll see how we go. They're a handy little device, these things, that, like I say, it saves you removing the string. Oh no, we were able to get it out of the way. I've just got a couple of bits of serving tied each end of the string. I use the square to check the position of where the serving needs to be, to give me a bit each side of it, so that when I check the nock and height, it's the square actually sits on a similar thickness of material, so you get an accurate reading of it.
I'm trying to be quiet for the video.
We can just bend it enough to get that out of the way, which is handy. So I didn't particularly want to take that off or change the position of it at least.
Did you want me to get an Allen key for that? Or?
No, I managed to twist it out and get it out of the way, so I don't have to worry, it's all good. We're just finishing it off now towards the end. I'm sure you guys have seen serving and how to end servings and finish them off before.
You'd be surprised how many people say, can you show us how to reserve it?
Yeah, alright, well what I do generally when I serve comes from the old days of making fishing rods and binding the runners on. But it's a little bit different this way. What we do, we go back in that side there, and then I usually double it up maybe 8, 9, even 10 times back that way. This way what happens when you serve back over the top of this, you can actually get it quite tight. Back in the old days I used to just loop another bit of material through, but you had a gap there with 2 or 3 strands going through instead of just the one. So you wind it back 8, 9 times, whatever, 10. And then when you wrap it back around, you put a fair bit of pressure on it to tighten it right up. Is that all right there, Jimmy? Can you see that?
Seems right in.
So you just keep winding it up until you run out of the wet string that you've wound back on backwards. You're basically winding it back off, back up to a point where all you are left with is that loop of serving, which is going to be pulled back through, but with this strand there. And that's it, locked off tight as a drum. And then the last thing I do is just, I don't like cutting it. I prefer to burn it because you get a melted blob on the end of it, similar to what you do with a D-loop, and then that just washes down. And that's it. We'll get that out of the way. So Greg now has a new serving. He's running out of excuses.
That's all it is. Just one excuse after the other.
He'll start blaming his coach next.
Or filming. The film crew's in the way.
The film crew's in the way. You'll have to start getting your hair done, Greg, for the videos.
Have to what?
Have to start getting your hair done for the videos.
Makeup.
It is.
Makeup.
Couldn't you imagine that? With a paper napkin they put around here. So
Cable guide's back on. Alright, now we're good to set up the D-loop. And there's a couple of little things I want to show you about that. It's what I like to do and I've always done.
Are you putting that back on?
No, we're going to shoot fingers.
Oh, there's an excuse. Right there.
Now, most people I've seen with D-loops, they lock them onto the serving and they don't do anything to actually keep the D-loop in place. Look, I'm not saying that they move. Maybe they don't. But the way I do it, I know it doesn't move, and that's another factor of just eliminating an issue out of your head, so that because if your D-loop moves, obviously it changes your anchor position to your peep sight, which changes your height on your sight settings. Then it changes your knocking height in relation to your arrow rest, which affects your arrow flight. There's just too many factors that can be affected by that D-loop sliding. So what I like to do is just put a little bit of serving. I'll locate where the nock's got to go. Then I'll put a little bit of serving top and bottom that locates the nock, keeps it in place, and then I'll put the D-loop each side of that serving. That way I know it's not going to move. It's just another little thing of eliminating every possibility in your equipment. It's like I said, the equipment's the only thing you can control.
But it's the only thing you can blame too.
Yeah. You can't blame the human factor.
No.
Greg won't wear that.
No.
Not possible. So what I do, I put the bow square on, we get the nock position. Now to get the nock position, what I generally do, I measure the thickness of the shaft, divide it by 2, the thickness of the nock, divide it by 2, and add those 2 half measurements together. That gives you the position that the top of your nock should be off square, which gives you a square arrow off the string. And I know what size Greg's are, we measured it yesterday, so I'm looking at about 5mm, which is, in the old measurement, just a little bit over 3/16 of an inch. So that's where the nock, or where the arrow is going to be nocked. So I just leave the nock on like that, so you don't have the arrow in your way. Probably use, where's my little serving gone? I'd used a bit of this, what's this one? This is mini serving HMPE. This stuff's good, doesn't stretch. I've got some nylon stuff there, it's not worth using because it just stretches all the time. That's why I like the braided fast flight, this braided material, that's just awesome. And you can get that in real thin stuff now too, that's very useful. I don't know where my thin one's gone. Alright, so what I do is just put a very small amount of serving just to locate that nock position. I'll probably only go around 3 or 4 times I just knot it each time so that it bites into the serving, so we know it's not going to move. I was talking to Jimmy about this earlier, and Jimmy says he does a similar thing. He just puts one bit of serving on the top of one side of the nock, which, yeah, that's fine. Again, that's a personal thing. Obviously works for Jimmy. Been watching his videos and he's shooting really well.
We'll see today, won't we?
We'll see. Greg's got no excuses today.
I've got some new arrows as well.
It's all,
But
it's all happening.
different arrows. That is.
Ooh.
What are you shooting now?
Well, how heavy are they at the front?
130.
Ultralight.
Goldtip ultralite.
Your F.A.C.T. How's your F.A.C.T?
The F.A.C.T is 17.5.
What's your F.A.C.T? I've never heard of that one.
Front of center.
Front of centre, oh, now I understand. This is one thing I mentioned earlier on. You've got to have an open mind in this sport. As long as I've been involved, there's something new comes up all the time. And everything's worth listening to. You've got to listen to anybody's opinions, because you never know what little thing they might throw to you that might help you. You might have a similar idea, but they throw a little spin on it, and then that gets you thinking. You think, oh, hang on, that might work. That's happened to me time and time again. It actually happened to me a while ago when Jimmy was doing a session on his arrow tuning, when he was pushing the arrows and getting the spine aligning it. Well, I noticed what Victory now have got the arrows marked with the spine.
Yeah.
Now, I'd never even thought of that. And the more I thought of it, I thought, well, hang on, that makes sense. So you really need to listen to everybody's ideas. And if you don't want to use it, you don't use it. But there's a lot of things in this sport. There's no right and wrong. There's right and wrong aspects of the technique, but then there's variations of that. You only have to look at some of the world champion or world's best archers, and their techniques are atrocious. But they're world championships. We're world champions, so you can't argue with their position. Rightio, so that's what I do. Just a little small bit of serving in there so that when you knock your arrow, even though, and the D-loop's on the outside of that, that tells me that your D-loop's not going to slide up or down. So that just eliminates that factor, because like I said, if that moves, you have an issue with your peep position, which affects your sights. You also have an issue with your arrow up and down at the back, your knocking point for your arrow, which creates bad arrow flight. A bit like we had the other night at the indoor with Greg's indoor bow. His arrows were coming out pointing to the ceiling and I couldn't stand it.
All hit the X though.
Yeah, but what you didn't see, when we fixed it and Jimmy stopped filming, Greg was punching them in the X every time after that. So once he settled down and wasn't angry with me, it all worked for him.
I don't think I'll ever be able to forgive you.
I would be very reluctant to do that in a tournament shoot for obvious reasons. But given the type of shoot it was, I couldn't stand watching this arrow coming out with the tail scraping the ceiling. And as it turned out, the knocking point was, what, it was about 3/16 low or something. It was crazy. All right, now the next issue I do with, the only other thing I wanted to tell you was when I put the D-loops on. Again, this is just me being pedantic, but as you know, when you come back to anchor, generally your hand flat, bit of an angle, not too much of a twist, because what you do is you get a real twist on your D-loop. So what I do, just to keep that as straight as possible, I run the D-loop from the inside, the left-hand side of the string to the right-hand side of the string.
Do you want to put new D-loop on?
Well, you can, yeah, if you've got material, gets it for me. All right, that one's not bad. I can probably get that on. Now, all that does to me, it just gives that D-loop that slight angle so that when you have anchored, there's just that little bit less twist in it. Maybe it's been pedantic, maybe it doesn't make a difference, but in my head it makes a difference. It's just one more little thing that you just got to factor into it. And this is the way you become with compounds. You just pick on the tiniest little things. Again, getting back to Jimmy's spine aligning the arrows, to me that made sense. Whether it makes a difference, I don't know. You'd have to shoot thousands and thousands of arrows to really get an accurate account. And then you have the issue of, you have good days and bad days. So but it makes a difference because it makes a difference in your mind. That's the big factor, and that's what you've got to work on. Rightio, D-loop time.
Quick stop.
Rightio, now like I said, I like to run the D-loop from this side to that side of the string.
Measure it with the other one? Cause the other
no, I do it a bit different.
Oh, okay.
I'll get it right, don't worry.
It was really short.
Yes, I know. I know that. We will get it right. Sometimes I've got to have a second go at doing these knots. I get them wrong, but this time I look like I might have got it right. Again, D-loops. There's different ways of doing them and there's different reasons for using them. I must admit I never used them for a long time. I've only recently started using them. And I've actually watched a video on a release aid releasing a D-loop, or the old idea with the string around the cord on the release aid around the string, and the cord around the string on the release aid is actually a cleaner release than a D-loop, which surprised me. I thought a D-loop would be cleaner.
That is surprising.
Yeah. The only issue you have when you run the old idea with the cable, the string off the release aid around the string, is you have a very acute angle that your nock sits on the string. That's why you've got to be careful what nocks you use when you do that. I think it's the beiter, they've actually got an angle in the throat that allows you to do that. I'm pretty sure it's the beiter nock's got that.
It's the beiter, symmetrical knock, I like to call it.
So we go from that side across to this side. We picked that up, oh yeah.
That's way too long.
Oh. Everyone's an expert. Now when you're doing these fresh D-loops, you got to do them very short, because once you stretch them out, they should, if I can get that in there, it's not going to happen. They should tighten down on the knot. How did that one work? Come on, was that?
You open it.
Eh?
then you got to open it. It's a weird one.
That's a weird one, that one. Oh, you got to do it that way?
Looks like it.
Oh, that's a bit weird. Okay.
This is a strange one, isn't it?
How's that? Is that alright? Too long?
It's a bit long.
Bit long? Well, I don't know how I'm going to use this one with it because I don't know that I'll get it in there. I might have to put it in there first. That might give us a good starting reference for the length if we start with it in there. Still too long?
You don't want it too short because it starts talking the string.
Yeah.
It is a bit longer. Do you think it'll make any difference though?
I don't think so.
As soon as it has
The longer you D-loop, the less torque you get.
Yeah, you don't want it long that it affects your draw length. That's the only thing, and your anchor point. I think that looks all right to me, Greg. We'll give it a shot. All right, so all I've got to do now is cut the end off, the excess, burn it up, and get a bit of a knob on it so that it doesn't pull through. Sharp blade would be good. There's me. There it is. That's nice material, that stuff, Greg.
Thanks. Went down to Manning's and got
What
this
to
much.
steal from?
Got
steal
this
it from
much
you.
for they charged me $10 and it frayed within 2 weeks. Remember that?
I did remember that.
Yeah.
From Manning's Sport. It was that long and it lasted 2 weeks.
That's
And
good
it was
stuff.
Didn't you get your
useless.
money back for that?
I went back and she said, "What's your money back?" She said, "Yeah, it's the principle. It's not the fact that it's $10, it's the principle." And then I bought for $10 from archery supplies in South Australia. $10 I bought that.
The whole length.
High quality. It hasn't gone yet.
Nah,
I've
it's
put it on
good
once,
stuff.
it hasn't worn.
Now what I've just done then, just made a final check on that knock and height. It's spot on to where I'm happy with. And so all things being equal, Greg should be able to use his, what are we shooting, 50?
Yep.
Should be able to use his 50 metre setting, and I hope it's right.
Okay.
Otherwise I'll never get the end of it.
There you go.
There you are, Mr. Taylor. Let's
Thank
do
you.
it.
Another happy customer.
Oh dear.
Alrighty guys, so if you like that, that's how we reserve and put a new D-loop on. So if you liked Gary back in the action, make sure you let us know in the comments, make sure you hit the like button for us. Tell me how many times a week you want to see Gary on the channel, how many tips a week do you want too?
Before we go too, sorry Jimmy, about 6 months ago I had a request from one of the viewers in regards to trying to coaching tips for teaching you to shoot with both eyes open. I'm going to get onto that because I let you down, but we're going to get onto that soon.
Well, there we go. That might be the next tip, the next Gary tip on how to keep both eyes open. Alright guys, so hit that like button for us, hit the subscribe button, hit all the buttons.
It's the only way to do it.
We'll see you soon for another Gary tip.